If you're watching this video, you probably grew up playing a turn-based game that became a core childhood memory for you. Maybe it was one of the first Pokemon games, a classic Mario RPG, or an old Final Fantasy game when the series was still turn-based. The genre has been around for forever now, and we've seen how turn-based games have evolved over the years. And as the games evolved, so did the narratives around them. Somewhere along the way, a rift started to become apparent between those who like the genre and those who, well, clearly didn't. While a majority of gamers grew up with these types of games, many of us have grown to have a distaste for the genre, or many of us have grown to only love it even more in the modern age. So what exactly led to us feeling this way towards a genre that seems to polarize the community every time a new turn-based game shakes up the industry? What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Anna, I'm a variety gamer who likes to yap about video games. I haven't recorded a long-form YouTube video in a while, but this topic was a long time coming. I've been wanting to do a video on this topic for a couple months now, and I knew that this topic was going to be relevant because of a little game called Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Obviously, this game has blown up since its release last month. I've been seeing pretty much clips of it every time I go on any social media platform, and it's just popped up in like all my conversations related to gaming. People are coming to me about whether they should play this game, my thoughts on the game, and just how the success of the game has been so interesting to see. If you've been following me, you know that I was hyped for this game since its reveal. Ever since that trailer was shown in that Sony presentation, I was super hyped for this game to come out. And I knew that this game was going to be a hit when it released. And the reason why I knew this game was going to be such a hit is for a few reasons. So when you think about recent games that make it very successfully or break out into the mainstream, whether they are indie games or AAA games, they're often identifying and solving a gap within a genre. And oftentimes the solution for closing this gap is by combining genres within gaming. I think this is why we often see marketing taglines for new games come out that are often phrased like, this game but make it X. I saw this newsletter from the Game Discovery Co. recently. They did a write-up on this indie game called Clover Pit, and this is a good example of what I just said. They described the game as like the demonic love child of Balatro and Buckshot Roulette. And actually, Balatro is a good example of following this formula. So the first part of this equation, this formula, when it comes to Balatro, is choosing a genre that people have a long-standing love for. A long-standing genre that people like and will always like and probably will never go away. So in this case, it is card games. And the problem identified is, how do you make such a long-standing genre that's been around for forever? How do you make it so people are into the genre again? Balatro did this by combining it with another genre that's just been very trendy, very popular amongst the gaming community in the past couple years. In this case, it was obviously roguelikes. Roguelikes really blew up after Hades was released. We saw the same thing happen with open world games after Breath of the Wild had its massive success. Many other open world games followed after that. What Expedition 33 was going for was very, very clear to me from the reveal trailer. So following the formula, Expedition 33 chose a long-standing genre that's been beloved since its inception, and that genre is obviously turn-based games. Turn-based games have been around for forever. We all played Pokemon games when we were younger, right? And they've been beloved since then. It's a genre that will never go away. But the team behind Expedition 33 knew the sentiment around turn-based games that I think could only be really understood if you are a gamer yourself, you're really integrated into the gaming community and the narratives that go on in the community. They knew that turn-based games did have a narrative around them that, although they are definitely beloved and have been since the beginning, there was a sentiment around them being slow, boring, unimmersive, and there is just a barrier for a lot of people to get into the genre. I think they also understood that this genre was heavily monopolized by JRPGs with anime aesthetics, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think they just knew that this was another point for them to have a fresh take on. So what did they do? They combined the genre with another genre. They took elements from action RPGs that have been popular in the last couple years. They added elements that made the game more mechanically challenging to be reminiscent of those games. They also obviously gave Expedition 33 a much more Western aesthetic. So you put all that together and you have a global hit. I thought it was really, really smart of them to go for this genre and try to bridge the gap between people who don't really like turn-based games but maybe want to try it, and for people who love turn-based turn-based games already. According to Game Discover Co. at the time of this newsletter, 29% of Clair Obscure's ownership on Steam is in China, followed by 18.5% in the US, 8% in its native France, a big outperform, with 10 countries including Japan at greater than 2% ownership. I actually thought this was really interesting. I didn't expect the biggest market to be in China, and also the Japan market to be a lot smaller. I would say I'm not like the most familiar with Japan's like gaming trends and how the market performs there, but I just thought that was really interesting because I thought they would vibe with this game being that it's turn-based. So actually, let's just take a step back and I just want to talk about my thoughts on the game. So I beat this game about a week ago and I'm not going to talk about any spoilers or anything, but I do want to talk about my major thoughts on the game. I started playing this game right on its release and played it pretty much every single day until I beat it last week. I did post a short summary on Shorts of my overall review of the game, no spoilers, if you wanted to go watch that, but I'll give like a quick TLDR. Obviously, the combat is like the highlight of the game. I had so much fun. As someone who already likes turn-based games, I was like, this is like one of the most fun turn-based games I've ever played, and I've played a decent amount of them. I just love how different the dodging, the parrying, and like the real-time action inputs made the combat compared to other turn-based games I've played. And I really like the balance that the game had where you feel like you're really strong at certain parts of the game, but you're also quickly humbled by how strong some of the optional bosses are. I couldn't believe how strong, how many times I've been 1-hit KO'd in that game. The game clearly is a love letter to the games that came before it. There's so many turn-based games and other types of games too that they draw inspiration from. I saw this one TikTok from this one creator who talks about all the inspirations he could see in the game.
Super Mario RPG, of all things. You got Legend of Dragoon's rhythm-based attacks. You got Persona's menuing. FF9's gem system where you can allocate them into different skills or abilities. Final Fantasy's realistic 3D graphics. Legend of Dragoon's world map. It feels like Dark Souls in some of the parry timing and dodging.
And I think the only critiques I really had were just like quality of life things that could have made my experience a little bit better, but they were not deal breakers in any way. But yeah, I had a blast with the game, and I'm sure people who follow me know that. I've been posting a bunch of clips of me just playing it, and it's just been like really great experiencing a game all together with the collective gaming community on this scale, because it's been a minute, probably since like Baldur's Gate 3 maybe, where I've had this feeling of just like so much genuine excitement over this product where we feel like it really came from the heart. It comes from a relatively lean team, and it's just creatively something fresh and just fun. In terms of the story, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think the prologue was insanely powerful. I think the story kind of falls off towards like the last third of the game, but up until that point, it was a lot of twists and turns, a lot of things that I just did not expect in any way possible. And I do think that this game has one of the best endings I've ever really seen in a game in forever. I was like thinking about this ending for hours and hours and hours. I was like trying to discuss it with people, and there's just like so many things to say about it, and I'm like, I don't remember the last time I felt that way about an ending at all. I think it's really, really hard to write material like that where you can have so much discussion over the ending of the game. If you want to see my thoughts on the ending, by the way, I did post a short talking with spoilers included my overall thoughts on that ending. But actually, let's go back to the narrative around this team that made this game, Sandfall Interactive. So again, of course, it's so easy for us to root for a game that was created by a small, scrappy, but mighty team. I watched this YouTube video that popped up on my recommended that talks about like how this game and this team behind Expedition 33 was created, and it seemed like a lot of like serendipitous moments that led to such a great team behind this game. They mentioned how like one of the writers came from a subreddit post, and the composer was found on SoundCloud, and other team members didn't necessarily have direct experience with creating a game, but they were just given a chance. And of course, I've seen all the discourse of how people really love that the founders behind the company that made Expedition 33 came from Ubisoft. People really love rooting for the person who just like, yeah, I'm gonna leave Ubisoft because They're super corporate, they are creatively stifling, and they probably only care about revenue numbers. So I'm gonna go do my own thing and create something that's really special for gamers and comes from the heart. I do think though that this whole narrative of this game was only made by 30 people though was a little bit exaggerated. If you run credits, you know that this game was not made by only 30 people. I think this got misconstrued somewhere where I think maybe it's like 30 core people on the Sandfall Interactive team, but there's way more people who worked on it that were outsourced, that were contractors, etc. But I think the writers in the articles debunking this myth make a good point that the point isn't that this game was made by 30 or so people. It's the fact that it's still a small, lean team of passionate creators who created this game and made something special. I love how since the reveal of this game, it felt like this game was trying to position itself to be pretty community oriented. I think they've done a good balance of like posting serious content on their pages, but also being a little bit silly at times. I think going back to like how they recruited their composer, how they highlight the voice actors involved in the game, and how they address their community is just like a very indie approach that I think reminds me a lot of how Baldur's Gate 3 did it, of just like how they interact with their community. So anyways, as I was posting a lot of clips on this game on like my TikTok, my Instagram shorts, I had one video that went pretty viral, and the video was of me being repeatedly smashed by this optional boss that comes up in the overworld, and you basically have to keep dodging it or parrying it to beat it. And I thought this boss was funny. It was clearly a gag boss and just like a joke that the devs put into the game. And I thought it would make for a funny clip, and I think a lot of people do agree it's like a funny clip because it went viral. But the thing with virality is that the more viral a clip becomes, the more haters come out of the woodworks. And oh boy, did the haters come out into the comments for this video. I started getting a lot of comments just saying like, this is your game of the year. This is why turn-based games are trash. How are you guys saying that this is like a 10 out of 10 game? And I don't really like to make like super reactive content, but I decided to make a video replying to those comments being like, some of you guys need to relax. So in this video, I'll give a TLDR of it. I basically say that people need to relax when it comes to hating this genre of turn-based games. I said that, you know, Expedition 33 really feels like a gateway game when it comes to getting into this genre. They really made it so it's like so easy to get into the game, and it doesn't feel like a lot of the things that a lot of turn-based game haters hate are in this game. So basically in that video, I said that if you give Expedition 33 an honest shot and you still don't like it, I don't know if you'll ever like the genre because it feels like such a gateway game into the genre. And if you give a fair and honest shot to the game and you still don't like turn-based games, that's totally fine and you can just move on. And then it kind of led to me just wondering like, why are the haters for turn-based games so loud compared to any other genre? Like culturally, I think a lot of us understand this. I think a lot of us see the haters for turn-based game just like so much more upfront about it than other genres. Like for example, I think a lot of people don't like sports games. I think a lot of people don't like puzzle games, but I think the haters for those genres aren't nearly as loud as the haters for turn-based games. And I was just wondering like why. And in that video, I give a personal example of saying like, I don't really like Metroidvanias that much, but I don't have to like tell everybody, tell the world about it. While the haters for turn-based games really seem like they need the universe to know that they really hate this genre. And I made a conclusion in the video basically saying that I think a large reason why turn-based game haters are so vocal compared to the haters of other genres is because it really boils down to Game of the Year debates. I think that people get really upset over this title, and I think they just hate seeing a genre that they really despise seriously be in the conversation for the Game of the Year title, the conversation that this game might be the best game of the year. And as a side note, I think I'm going to make a follow-up video just on like Game of the Year in general, because I've been increasingly more jaded and indifferent about this whole discourse over Game of the Year and how it's changed the way we talk about games. And yeah, and I think I personally feel like we've just grown to care way too much about this title in general. I basically end the video saying like games within the genre should be looked at as individual games and judged for its experience individually, because If I were to compare Baldur's Gate 3 to Metaphor ReFantazio, those are completely different games, and the only thing they share is that they're turn-based combat, but they couldn't be more different. I made another video where I basically addressed this question that I got from two people in real life of how Persona 5 compares to Expedition 33, and I'm like, we are comparing apples to oranges here. They could not be more different. There are so many other things besides this combat that's like different about them, and you should take into account all these different things besides the combat, which is why I think it's so fascinating to me where we're just like so quick to judge games within this one genre when they can be so different. So for example, I don't really like Metroidvanias, but I understand that Hollow Knight is like different from like Animal Well. I would care about judging the games based on the holistic experience, not because they're both games from this one genre that I don't really like. And I've been actually seeing this discourse over turn-based games happening all over my pages for a couple months now. So back in March, actually, I got to play the demo of Expedition 33, and this was exclusive to content creators, which I thought was an interesting choice. I think they should have just made the demo public to everyone. So yeah, I posted this clip way back in March of a battle from Expedition 33, and I got a comment that said, "Can't play turn-based games, so slow, makes me want to tear my hair out." And I took the bait and I was like, okay, I want to know why like you guys hate turn-based games so much. What's the reason why you guys hate this genre so much? As a person who loves turn-based games, I would just like want to know from my own data because I don't really understand why. And this video where I asked people their thoughts on this, yeah, over 5,000 comments on TikTok, also over 5,000 comments on Instagram. So as a fun little exercise, we're gonna go through some of these top comments to understand where this side of hating turn-based games comes from. A lot of these comments are kind of snarky, but I'm going to try to highlight the ones that are mostly serious and then some of the funny ones. So let's actually start with the Instagram comments. I'm simple terms, me no wanna think, me want death now. And I actually replied to this saying, fair enough. Like, okay, I mean, I kind of get that. When you think about old turn-based games, a lot of the battles did take a really long time. When you think about old turn-based games, a lot of them did have the bad ratio of having too many enemies and these battles taking too long. So I get that. It makes the action less interesting when characters are just standing around doing nothing. I actually saw a decent amount of comments saying more or less the same sentiment in this comment here of just like turn-based games taking you out of the immersion. For me personally, this has never bothered me. I felt like maybe because I knew I was signing up for a turn-based game that I didn't feel like it took away the immersion for me to like enter battle and take turns and stuff. But I can understand how that can be a little bit weird, how people take turns to fight an epic battle if they're trying to like kill each other. I'll be the outlier here. I loved Pokemon when I was young and still do, but now turn-based games just feel too slow and take me out of the immersion. I can make the most powerful attack with a cool cinematic and great strategy, but seeing everybody just stay still waiting for it to connect doesn't convey much emotion anymore. Action RPGs like Dark Souls or Monster Hunter require a good amount of strategy, and the real-time action gets the adrenaline going. I think this is a completely fair take to actually say. I replied to the comment actually saying like, it is a little silly when you think about it this way. Interestingly, I think action RPGs have more chance of becoming stale for me because I think difficulty scaling in turn-based games is more of an exciting challenge for me. So I think this is more just like to each their own when it comes to what genres they like. I do think it's really interesting how, besides this comment, a lot of the comments that I saw just like scrolling through, Pokemon was the biggest exception to the rule. I think a lot of people said, besides Pokemon, I don't really like turn-based games. It was always Pokemon, Pokemon, Pokemon. Like that is the one exception to the rule. I think this is an interesting point for a lot of reasons. I think it shows just how powerful Pokemon is and its connection to nostalgia and our childhood memories, because when you think about it, Pokemon is like a pretty like, it's not like the most advanced version of turn-based games. It's actually like relatively very simple and it's not really evolved much over the course of its games. But this is like the turn-based games that I feel like will always be a staple in people's lives and will never really go away. I like the hand-eye coordination required to play normal combat games. Turn-based games don't require that. Even though they require you to think tactically and value every move you make, they don't give you the rush of getting swarmed by 30 enemies, having to parry, dodge, attack, and what whatever else at the same time just to survive. I recently got Baldur's Gate 3 and Persona 5, so I'm trying out something new. But so far, their combat systems don't give me the same excitement as something like Hi-Fi Rush. I'm learning here that a lot of people just really love the adrenaline of feeling stress from combat. So I guess in that sense, it does make sense that a lot of people who are looking for like a more relaxing and non-stressful gaming experience go for like turn-based games more. Some people really like to have their anxiety through the roof. Also, too much thinking, they prefer reflex type games. Time consuming, they want immediate results. Action or acting, competitive nature over contemplating nature. And I just replied good summary because I think these are all actually fair points to make. I think I have never been that good at reflexes in video games. I've never been like a super mechanically good player when it comes to like shooting games, for example. I think this is actually making me look in retrospect why I played so many turn-based games. I think this actually might be the biggest thing. I think I'm just not that very good at mechanically challenging games. And I think I found the experience of like playing chess in a turn-based game combat system to be more interesting for me when I'm not very good at the mechanically challenging part. But I think this kind of highlights more why Expedition 33 is so great, because it bridges that gap between people who really enjoy the mechanics and the challenging part of that versus the people who like the challenge in a more chess strategic kind of combat system. Okay, now I'm looking at TikTok comments. I think TikTok comments were a lot more troll, so I'm gonna read some of the funny ones. I used to hate turn-based games and then I learned how to read. This was one of the most liked comments. Hate turn-based but acts like press dodge when the glowing circle appears is peak game design. Some people, I guess, want to react, not think ahead. A lot of the comments were just like, you guys just don't want to think. They grew up with Fortnite instead of Pokemon. Is this true? I really hope it's not true, because I'm like old now. I don't really know how kids react to like games where it takes a while to like do things, where you have to take time to take a turn. Like turn-based games are like a huge sigh of relief for me because I'm terrible at fast-paced reactionary games. Again, that's me. And why are they all so rude about it? I just find them repetitive. Okay, this just goes back to, again, I think a lot of turn-based games have improved over the years of like finding that perfect ratio of like the number of enemies versus how long it takes to kill that enemy in one full round of combat. I think a lot of turn-based games in the modern age have iterated on this a lot better, where the experience isn't like, you know, you have to take 10 minutes or 5 minutes to kill a single monster that is just like 1 out of the 20 that you run into in this one section of the game. I like them, but I hate random battles, which is a staple in the genre, or was. Most of them are also too long and drag out. See, this is why I think it's interesting how Pokemon is the exception to the rule, because they are like the epitome of random battles and just like not even seeing which enemy you're about to fight. And there were so many of those random battles that happened in the overworld. This comment section is bad for my health. Okay, we have a respectful but disagreeing comment on turn-based games. Personally, I can't play turn-based games because I don't have the patience for them. I just prefer real-time third-person games. Turn-based games are amazing, just not my cup of tea. See, I like how this comment can admit that turn-based games can be amazing. It's not like it's on the genre for sucking. It's just a preference thing. I feel it's just the lack of competitive aspect of it. Gamers have been trained lately to focus on showing how amazing they are at video games, and action and reflexes are the easy way to do so. This is also really interesting because I feel like it depends on which competitive games you're into, because I know so many people in the fighting game community who love turn-based games. But I guess I wouldn't say that I know a lot of people who play like shooter competitive games that really like turn-based games. See, here's another comment about Pokemon. No matter how in-depth a turn-based game gets, at the end of the day, it just feels like Pokemon with extra steps to me, and I much rather just play Pokemon in that case. Maybe we just need to blame Pokemon more for how they permanently change people's views on turn-based games. I've come to like it more over the years, but only for modern titles. Can't stand games like OG Final Fantasy. Like a Dragon and Infinite Wealth are my favorite turn-based games so far. See, I do think that older turn-based games is a little rough to play now compared to how they've improved so much more in the modern age. I think turn-based games, even me as a turn-based games lover, find that a lot of the older ones are like yeah, I can get a little impatient with them. So I actually think that this is a fair take. I think I would say that if I were to look at turn-based games now, I think I enjoy the more modern ones compared to the older ones, even if they are like classics. Okay, I think we've gotten to the point where we pretty much addressed the major ones, and I think the rest of the comments are mostly repeats of the things I said before, or people just arguing with other people on why turn-based games are great and why they love them. So I wanted to end this video on some closing thoughts. As a person who loves turn-based games, I just wanted to give the floor to understanding why people don't really like the genre, and I wanted to understand where this hate was coming from. I personally got a lot of comments saying that, you know, I don't really like turn-based games, or I don't usually play turn-based games, but Expedition 33 was something that really intrigued me and I want to give it a shot, or they made me feel different about turn-based games. And I love seeing that. I don't think that just because people don't really like the genre, we should be gatekeeping this genre from people who didn't really like it before. I think it's amazing that Expedition 33 has been able to bridge that gap for us, for getting people more into the genre. And hopefully this means that more turn-based games will be coming, because I think in the past couple years, it's been a great time to be a lover of turn-based games, but I hope this just makes it so more turn-based games become a thing. And I love that Expedition 33 was able to show us that there is still a lot to be done within the genre, that we can still experience something that feels fresh and new with turn-based games because they were able to do it. And I hope that Expedition 33 just shows that not all turn-based games are the same. And I think that's like the overall message that I hope people will walk away with if you are someone who typically doesn't play turn-based games or doesn't like them. That a lot of popular and successful turn-based games aren't the same. They're not one-to-one. There's things beyond their combat and the fact that they're turn-based games that make them special or unique. What is the storytelling behind the game? What is the writing behind the game? The music, the characters. Like, there's so many other things that make these games great, and we shouldn't be so quick to judge these games just because of their genre label. So that's pretty much all I have to say on this topic. Please leave your comments down below for me on this topic, how you feel about turn-based games, how you feel about Expedition 33. If you notice in this video, I read a lot of comments that are posted in like my YouTube shorts, my Instagram reels, my TikToks. So be sure to follow me on those platforms because they could inspire my next video idea. As for my next game, I'm actually almost done with chapters 1 and 2 with Deltarune, and I'm trying to beat Blueprints before this Switch 2 comes out. And then yeah, I'll be on to playing the Switch 2 next. Definitely hope to be doing some sort of video around the Switch 2 release as well. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one. Bye.